Hey everyone, it's been over 2 minutes and I haven't been raped yet. Canadian justice system? Not so lucky. Hi, I'm Diana Davison. Now, I have a nonprofit called the Lighthouse Project, and I help the falsely accused and wrongfully convicted in cases of sexual assault and domestic violence primarily. But today, I want to talk about a recent decision in a murder case. It's pretty fabulous, and it does connect to some of the issues that I'm concerned with, primarily how expert witnesses are used and prosecutorial misconduct. So this case, the decision was delivered by Justice Laskin in the Ontario Court of Appeals. I'm going to just try and do this all in one take because it's uber hot here and I just want to turn the fan back on again. So excuse me if I reference my notes. So this case was called R versus Abbey, and the most recent decision just came out in, I think it was August 4th, but August of 2017. And it involves the use of an expert witness and his knowledge about teardrop tattoos. So essentially, this kid got convicted of murder because of a tattoo. The Crown's case, the prosecutor's case, was crap. So everything, and they go through this in this decision. I'll put a link to the decision below so you can read it in all its glory. Essentially, none of their witnesses had any, credibility. Mostly it was people who had made plea bargains with Crown in order to say, yeah, this guy said he did it. And it all came down to this expert witness. And in the first trial, this witness was not allowed to testify. And so Warren Abbey was acquitted. And the Crown appealed that, and the appeal court said, yeah, we think this expert should have been allowed. So he had to go back to retrial, because that happens in Canada. And then he was convicted on the second trial with this witness's testimony. So the witness, Mark Totten, had an extensive resume. Nobody, said that he wasn't some sort of a qualified expert. And it would just come down to, in this case, what he knew about tattoos and what they mean for gang members, and whether or not, basically what happened is, this guy got a teardrop tattooed on his face 4 months after a murder, and so they decided that that was a good enough connection to say that this kid murdered the other one, right? There's a little bit of circumstantial evidence, but really that's the only link that they were making in this trial. Kid got a teardrop tattoo, so for anybody considering doing that for fun and amusement, be very careful. You could end up in jail for 25 years. Okay, so they get their conviction. And this was the prosecutor's witness, this Mark Totten, right? So they put him forward as an expert, and he was allowed to testify on the second trial. Now here's where it gets really, really crazy. So another trial comes up. This is R versus Gager. And this time, this expert, Mr. Totten, is being called by defense, and they want this expert to say that Gager was not a gang member because he didn't have any of the signs that this expert would recognize. And so this time the prosecutors want to discredit Mr. Totten. So they did that in a voir dire, which is a preliminary kind of hearing to see if they were going to allow the expert. This time, Crown goes and does some research, and they find out that Totten, not so reliable. He's inflated his statistics, he's misrepresented his knowledge, and they pretty much completely discredit him. So, obviously Abbey's lawyer gets wind of this, and so they do an appeal saying basically this witness has been impeached. This witness, their credibility has been pretty much obliterated by the prosecutors. And the prosecutors go, oh, no. You could have made that argument in trial the first time, so we don't think this new evidence should be allowed. And thankfully, the judge, I know, you might have to rewatch this to get a sense of exactly what happened. Yeah, so Crown's own witness, they're saying, expert, we want to make sure that his testimony is heard so we can get a conviction in a murder trial. They then go and they undermine the credibility of their own witness in a second trial, and when it goes back to the first one, they say, doesn't matter that this guy has now been, by us, discredited completely. Well, you can read it. It wasn't necessarily completely, to be fair to Mr. Totten. But anybody who has a Mark Totten being called as an expert witness, you might want to make sure you read this decision so you can get rid of him. So the judge in this case had a really important point to make, and he overturned the conviction, by the way, but sent it back to retrial if Crown wants to do so, now that they pretty much have no case. And he points out, without that witness, there was an acquittal. With the witness, there was a conviction. So without him again, you're probably not going to get a conviction. But who knows, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe they will retry this kid. He's already been in jail for quite a few years. So, not to say that he was necessarily the brightest, guy on the street, because he's in a gang and he's getting teardrop tattoos. But, and maybe he did kill this kid. We certainly don't have the proof. And so the major issue here is, in so-called expert areas like this, because we're getting more and more of these in sexual assault trials, right? So these people who are apparently experts on rape and trauma and reactions to it. And I don't think we can use the word science, and essentially their testimony says any behavior by the complainant is consistent with rape. That's what they testify to. And these people are being allowed. And Crown is saying, oh yeah, absolutely fine, right? And this is another one. They've said, yeah, completely, this guy's impeccable. And then they go and they impeach him themselves. And then don't want the other guy to get the advantage of it. Okay, so this is what the judge has to say about the prosecutors trying to block this kid from using Crown's own evidence against their own witness. But the Crown is not an ordinary litigant. Its role is not to obtain a conviction, but to try to ensure a fair process and a just result. The Crown has impeached Totten, its own key witness, albeit in another proceeding, and yet by its silence in this proceeding must be taken not to have challenged the many serious problems in Totten's trial testimony, shown by the fresh evidence. In these circumstances, it seems to me to be fundamentally unfair and unjust for the Crown to rely on Abbey's lack of due diligence to defeat his fresh evidence application. So there's a little bit of sort of legalese in there, but the short story is the judge just looked at the prosecutors and went, you guys are pricks, right? Get out of my courtroom. But this is a really big problem, not just in Canada. I've seen it in the United States. It's happening in a lot of places. Prosecutorial misconduct that is not being addressed. When they do have some sort of a complaint about them or some sort of an investigation into it, nobody ever finds out what happened. So there's no deterrence, and in fact they usually just get a slap on the wrist. That's not good enough. The prosecutor is one of the most powerful people in the criminal justice system because they decide which cases they're going to try, which means if they decide they're going to take somebody to court on almost no evidence, that this person who, has a bigger chance of being innocent has to get dragged through the system for years. It costs them, tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Their life is at least temporarily destroyed, if not completely, right? So this is a major decision that we need to know that this power is being exercised properly. And also then we have to make sure that they don't hide disclosure from the accused, and also we need to make sure that they fully investigate. I was at a trial, I guess the week before, and I was there all week, where this prosecutor I've seen on 2 occasions has actively tried to avoid evidence in this case being brought to trial, not in the normal ways, has literally said, I don't want evidence, I don't need evidence. We're talking about text messages between the accused and the complainant, and we're talking about a witness who could actually rebut and completely discount some claims made by the complainant. And this is in the prosecutor's own file. This is their own evidence. And she says, I don't want to call him. Why? The prosecutor's special duty is to seek the truth, not to seek a conviction. It's very, very important, and they're not following through on this duty. Now, I'm not saying all prosecutors are bad. There's a lot of good ones out there. And those good ones have to start doing something about the other guys, because I'm coming to get you. We have to set something up so these prosecutors are being monitored and there's a complete transparency in the system. That's one of the things I'm going to try and do. Going to Toronto in just a couple of days now. So, and also I'm just drenched in sweat right now, so I'm going to turn off the camera and get ready for my trip. If you can support the Lighthouse Project, I'm going to meet with a whole bunch of lawyers, and specifically we're going to try and stop Bill C-51 from passing, which would be a travesty to due process, and it will increase wrongful convictions. So hopefully some good stuff happens from that trip, and if you can support that trip, and we've had some really great donations for those people, thank you so much, then links are below, as well as links to this case. Go read it, it's fascinating. Crown likes the expert witness, Crown discredits the expert witness, they want to uphold the expert witness. So basically, witnesses are great as long as it suits the prosecutor. Should never happen, and it can't happen again.